graph the following equation. They give an equation of a secant, and they ask you to graph it over 2 periods. Now let's look at the components that we have. We have the 2, which is the value of A. That will give you your amplitude. So your amplitude is 2. And the 2 is your value of B. Now remember that we are graphing secant. Therefore, we're going to base our graph on the cosine graph. The reciprocal of secant will be cosine. And for cosine, the period is 2 pi over B. In this case, B will be 2. So therefore, your period will be pi. And there's no vertical shift or phase shift. There's no vertical or horizontal shift. So those are the only things that we need. I'm going to make my x and y axis. And I need to go over 2 periods, and each one's pi. So if I do everything by 4, I should have enough space if I place my y axis here. And I'll place my x axis here. Every 4, I'm going to make it pi. 1, 2, 3, 4, that'll be 1 pi. 1, 2, 3, 4, that'll be 2 pi. 1, 2, to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4 will be negative pi. My amplitude is 2, up 2, and down 2. And my period is pi. There's no shift, so therefore I'm going to start at 0. And I'm going to end at pi. So this will be 1 period. I'm going to divide it in 4 sections. So I'm going to take half of it, and then half of each. And I'm dealing with cosine, so I need to think, cosine. Do I start at 0 or at 1? In this case, I'm going to start at 1, or in this case 2. So 2, 0, down, 0, up. So this will be my graph of my cosine. I'm going to do it with pencil because I need to go back and erase it. But we want to graph secant. So therefore, what we talked about is that whenever it's 0, the reciprocal of 0 will be undefined. So therefore, that will create our asymptotes. Undefined will create our asymptotes. Now before let me just go and graph it. In this case, I'm going to take this point, and it's going to get closer and closer to the asymptote, but it's never going to touch it. It's going to get closer and closer and closer to the asymptote, but it's never going to touch it. Then on this side, sometimes you guys will just see part of the graph. Now they ask you to do 2 periods. So let's go and find our n, or second n. If this is pi, that's where we ended. We are going to add our period, which is plus pi. That'll be 2 pi. So therefore, once we do another period, we'll take 1, 2, 3, 4. And once again, we are going to divide in half, half, half. Remember, we're graphing cosine. So we're going to start at 2, then 0, then down to 2, 0, and up to 2. And this will be my graph of my cosine. Now we talked about your asymptotes. Whenever it's 0 for the cosine, the reciprocal of 0 is undefined, so that creates our asymptotes. Whenever it's 0, the reciprocal will be undefined, so that will be creating our asymptotes. And from there we can go and make our graph. This point here, getting closer and closer to the asymptote, but it's not going to touch it. Getting closer and closer to the asymptote, but it's not going to touch it. We are going to continue doing the other half now. And for this one, just going to take 1 half. So we did it over 2 periods. We want to make sure that we go back and see if we did everything correctly. Amplitude. Did I go up 2 and down 2? I did. Is my period pi? Yes. Did I do over 2 periods? Yes. And one of the things that some of you guys know that you have to graph cosine to graph it, but you forget to go back and graph secant. And the last thing I need to do is I just need to be able to erase my graph for the cosine. That should not be there. And that will be your graph.